At 78, Sally Field is finally pulling back the curtain on a life few truly understand. To the world, she was the sweet girl next door, the Oscar-winning actress with unmatched talent and a radiant smile. But behind the spotlight was a woman who fought tooth and nail for respect in Hollywood, endured heartbreak that left lasting scars, and searched for a love that never quite lasted. Now, she's ready to share the unfiltered truth about the roles that defined her, the battles that nearly broke her, and the reason she chose never to marry again. After 2 marriages, endless whispers from the tabloids, and decades of sidestepping the question, Sally Field is finally breaking her silence. At 78, she no longer hides behind Hollywood's glittering facade. Her reason for never marrying again is raw, fiercely honest, and delivered with the same courage that has defined her entire career. For a woman who spent her life commanding both stage and screen, this revelation isn't just a confession, it's a declaration of freedom. But before the heartbreaks, the bitter divorces, and the quiet decision to close her heart to men forever, Sally Field was simply a little girl with a storybook dream. She once believed in fairy tales, picturing the day she'd meet her Prince Charming and live the life she saw in movies. Born on November 6, 1946, in Pasadena, California, Sally's journey began far from the Hollywood spotlight. It started with innocence, hope, and the kind of youthful longing that made her eventual truth all the more heartbreaking. Sally was the child of actress Margaret Field and pharmacist Richard Dryden Field, a veteran of World War II. Her elder brother, Richard Dryden Field Jr., would later become a physicist and academic. When Sally was only 4 years old, her parents separated, and her mother remarried, this time to actor and stuntman Jock Mahoney in Tijuana, Mexico in 1952. Her heritage spanned across England, Ireland, and through her father's lineage to Sicily, Italy. However, beneath the Hollywood stepfather and glamorous background lay a more troubling reality. In her 2018 memoir, Sally disclosed that Mahoney had abused her during her childhood. As a teenager, she was the cheerful cheerleader at Portola Middle School and later at Birmingham High School in Van Nuys. Her peers included future financier Michael Millen and talent agent Michael Oites. While actress Cindy Williams was just a year behind her, life had already thrown challenges her way, even behind the cheerleading pom-poms and bright California smile. At 17, she faced an illegal abortion in Mexico, a harrowing ordeal that was compounded by being molested during the procedure. By 1965, television beckoned. She made her first appearance as the boy-crazy surfer girl in the sitcom Gidget, a show that initially flopped but later became a surprising success during summer reruns. Eager to leverage her youthful appeal, ABC quickly cast her in The Flying Nun as Sister Bertrille. The series lasted for 3 seasons, but Sally later confessed that she despised every moment of it. Directors did not show her the respect she deserved, and she felt trapped in a role that branded her as Hollywood's girl next door, a label that seemed impossible to escape. Her film debut had actually occurred earlier as an extra in the 1962 movie Moon Pilot. After Gidget and The Flying Nun, she landed her first leading role in The Way West, but the types of roles she truly desired remained elusive. Determined to break free from the stereotypes, she landed parts in TV shows like Alias Smith and Jones and Night Gallery, as well as in the 1971 film Maybe I'll Come Home in the Spring, in which she portrayed a fugitive teenager who returns home with a drug-using hippie boyfriend. She earned the role alongside John Davidson in Something Extra in 1973. Although the series lasted only a year, Sally's decision to genuinely learn her profession was a turning point in her life. She started learning from Lee Strasberg at the Actors Studio, who served as a tutor and assisted her in shattering the image of the adorable comedy star. She separated from her first spouse in 1975 at about the same time. Then came Sybil, the role that made all the difference. In the NBC television movie, Sally was able to explore depths she had never been able to previously by portraying a young woman with dissociative identity disorder. Any remaining reservations about her dramatic range were dispelled by her performance, which won her an Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actress in 1977. Her career took off after that. In movies like Heroes the End, Smokey and the Bandit, Hooper, and Stay Hungry, she gave outstanding performances. She then won her first Academy Award for Best Actress in 1979 after shocking both audiences and critics by playing the labor organizer in Norma Rae. She won her second Oscar for Places in the Heart 5 years later. Her iconic performances in Smokey and the Bandit 2, Absence of Malice, Kiss Me Goodbye, Murphy's Romance, and Steel Magnolia solidified her status as one of Hollywood's most bankable actors in the 1980s. Soap Dish, Mrs. Doubtfire, and Forrest Gump were among the other hits of the 1990s. Each one demonstrated her ability to switch between comedy and drama with ease. Sally created room for theater as well. She replaced Mercedes Ruehl in Edward Alb's The Goat or Who is Sylvia, which made its Broadway debut in 2002. She made a comeback in a revival of The Glass Menagerie 15 years later, for which she was nominated for a Tony Award. She debuted on the West End in All My Sons in 2019. She continued to explore even as she grew older. She played a funny character in the Netflix series Maniac, enchanted viewers in Hello, My Name is Doris, and most recently appeared on screen in 80 for Brady. Decades have passed since the little Pasadena girls dream of a happy ending, and Sally Field has experienced her fair share of victories and setbacks. But she has always carried the same calm truth, whether she is a mother who will stop at nothing to help her children, a nun who can fly, or a woman who will not be undervalued. She has always been greater than the stories that have been written about her. Sally Field's relationships aren't quite ideal. Since her debut as a bright-eyed young actress in the middle of the 1960s, Sally Field has been America's sweetheart. She has led the kind of life that is the stuff of Hollywood fantasies over the years. Global recognition, honors, and the opportunity to choose from a long list of attractive men who wanted her hand in theirs. However, Field's personal life had a different storyline behind the endearing grin and the romantic sparkle. Her upbringing in an abusive home influenced her perspective on closeness and lovemaking, making them both alluring and challenging. She revealed that she has always been attracted to males she both feared and loved in an interview with the Oprah magazine in 2008. She remembered that her connection with her stepfather was a jumble of opposites because he was both abusive and loving. Although both of her parents were emotionally repressed and quiet, she considered her mother as loving, and her stepfather fostered an environment in which she had to use rage to survive. For years, that initial mixture of dread and love permeated her romantic life. Field is doing better these days. She is contentedly single and reflects clearly about her past relationships, frequently grinning. However, fans continue to remain fixated on the guys she has been associated with throughout the years. After all, the stories tend to remain in your head when you've dated some of Hollywood's most famous people. Her romantic history reflects the pop culture of the late 1960s and early 1970s. Field was surrounded by other emerging stars as her career took off. She had an early connection to Lee Major, who was also a budding performer at the time. By 1972, she and Majors had been linked at some point between his connection with Marianne Moy and his affair with Big Valley co-star Linda Evans, according to a report in TV Picture Life magazine. Majors later used his 1981 single Unknown Stuntman as the theme for The Fall Guy, immortalizing his Hollywood adventures in music. He acknowledged in the lyrics that he had been on fire with Sally Field and had never been with anyone less than a 9, but he also said he wasn't the kind to kiss and tell. So good. Given that Major later married Farrah Fawcett in 1973, it's difficult to deny that the brag contained some truth. However, Pete Dool came before Major. In 1965, Field had recently secured her first major television role as the vivacious young surfer in Gidget. Following the conclusion of the series in 1966, Dool, who portrayed her character's brother-in-law, started hanging out with him. Field dismissed reports that the two were on the verge of a serious relationship in a 1967 interview with Movie Land and TV Time. In Hollywood, the press essentially married you off if you were out with someone more than 5 times, she noted. She maintained that dueling was just about spending time together. Unusual enough to merit protection on its own. When Dool was discovered dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound in 1971, the narrative took a tragic turn. Decades later, Field looked back on him with unfiltered passion, admitting that she had loved him very much and that she was sad that he was dead. She recalled how she had been annoyed at the time by his talent and the fact that he frequently treated her more like a sister than a fiancée. Field's career was changing again by the late 1960s. She had landed the main role in The Flying Nun, and her newfound notoriety came with a brief romance with the Monkees' then-famous Davy Jones. In February 1968, a story on their relationship appeared in Monkey Spectacular magazine, which clarified that it was characterized by easy friendliness and shared humor rather than exclusivity. Field recalled meeting Jones for the first time when he was one Miss Teen International. She felt he was really cool when they met up again in the studio, even if their first talk was brief. The discovery that they had similar senses of humor was what cemented the bond. They were often goofing around and laughing. But her time with the Monkees wasn't all fun and games. Field detailed how band members made innuendos about her on the set of The Flying Nun in her biography, In Pieces. She also described an unsettling experience in which she was besieged in her trailer by the gang until an aide intervened to assist her. Field started dating singer-songwriter Jimmy Webb around the same time. When they first began dating, she was still portraying Sister Bertrill, and their time together would go on to be one of the most contentious aspects of her narrative. She related an instance in which she woke up to discover Webb on top of her, grinding away to another melody, after the two had smoked a joint. Field explained that she didn't think he was acting maliciously, blaming his actions on his intoxication. In a 2018 email to the New York Times, Webb responded to the story, characterizing their time together as normal for two 22-year-olds in the swinging 1960s, complete with parties, marijuana, and ESSA. He said he had a lot of respect for her and acknowledged that he didn't include her in his own memoir so as not to damage her innocent reputation when her career took off. When Field married her high school sweetheart, Stephen Craig, in 1968, her personal life took a more conventional direction. Despite not being a member of the Hollywood apparatus, Craig, a construction contractor, went with her to functions and premieres. Field became pregnant while working on The Flying Nun, and in November 1969, their first son, Peter, was born. Eli, their second son, was born in May 1972. The hectic lifestyle of Hollywood was too much for the marriage to Stephen Craig. Even though the reason was kept under wraps, the two had parted ways by 1975. Later, Peter, their son, provided a brief glimpse into his parents' lives. He recalled being aware at a young age that his father, who by that time was living in a sort of commune in Oregon, and his mother were different from other fathers. He reflected that his early years had always been filled with extremes. By the late 1990s, Peter had established his own unorthodox career as a novelist, married a poet, and was drawing inspiration from his unique background. He attributes his storytelling style to his dramatic parents. Field has experienced a dramatic change by the 1970s. No longer just the girl from Gig who lived next door, she was a lady whose talent and self-assurance attracted the attention of Hollywood's most eligible men. Decades later, when she presented Steven Spielberg with the Vanguard Award at the Palm Springs Film Awards in January 2023, she disclosed that she had nearly dated him, bringing to light one of the more unexpected links from this time. Her company manager had attempted to arrange them, she revealed. He was sure they would get along, so he had set up a fictitious rendezvous at Universal Studios. She disclosed that Spielberg had never left her life, even though they never went on a date. Their relationship became stronger over time, and Field and Daniel Day-Lewis finally collaborated professionally on his 2012 film Lincoln, in which Field played Mary Todd Lincoln. Spielberg had a great deal of respect for her. He told Variety in 2022 that she had challenged Hollywood to typecast her and then broken through all the barriers to land fantastic roles on her own terms. He called her place in film history unique and complimented her taste, perseverance, and ability to endure. After filming Kiss Me Goodbye in 1982, Field started dating Kevin Kline, a rising actor in Hollywood who had recently collaborated with Meyer Street on Sophie's Choice. Although they appeared to be a good fit, their romance soon ended. They only had a few dates before reconnecting on screen as ex-lovers in the 1991 comedy soap Dish. Field's perspective on relationships had changed by 1984. She had learned to speak her mind, even if it meant telling a man that a joke wasn't amusing, and she told people that she no longer wanted to live by anyone's rules other than her own. It was evident that she was no longer interested in playing second fiddle, whether that new resolve resulted from her brief connection with Clean or her infamously complex relationship with Burt Reynolds. She became acquainted with Johnny Carson through her dating life in the 1980s. But Field didn't know how to just leave when the spark wasn't there. She said that she had never been good at saying no during an appearance on Watch What Happens Live in 2019. She took drastic efforts to get away. She couldn't find the words to confess that she simply wasn't interested, so she informed Carson that she was having a breakdown and being sent away. Carson Field's portrayal of Edna Spaulding in Places in the Heart became a pivotal moment as her attention returned to her career. Later, she told others that portraying Edna changed her self-perception. She had been repeating to herself, almost as a mantra, that she didn't need or desire anyone for the last 4 years. Edna, however, opened her up. Despite her lifelong insistence to the contrary, she came to the realization that people were created to be dependent on one another. Field had been divorced for almost 10 years and had moved on from her romance with Burt Reynolds by the time she met film producer Alan Grayman. They didn't fall in love right away when they met in a restaurant. However, they didn't begin dating for a year and a half. After they did, everything proceeded quickly. They got married less than a year later. Sam, their only child together, was born in 1987. He remained very close to his mother and would become one of the most important constants in her life. However, the marriage started to show signs of weakness. According to Field's 1996 People interview, Grayman loved going out, mingling, and attending parties, but she discovered the sheer thought of doing so made her nervous. She claimed that Mudville was no longer joyful. And they started concentrating on the negatives rather than appreciating the qualities they had in common. She told him that the stress in their home was unhealthy for both them and their son after she could no longer deny it. Despite their 1994 divorce, the pair continued to prioritize raising Sam. Kate Capshaw, Spielberg's wife, even said they were excellent co-parents and had a beautiful divorce. Field became more discreet about her romantic life when her second marriage failed. She brought a new date, Jerry Knight, a gaffer and electrician in the movie business, to the 1995 Waterworld premiere. Knight escorted her to the 47th Emmy Awards later that year, when the two were spotted holding hands and grinning on the red carpet, but their romance subtly waned. Their romance ended discreetly, without any unpleasant headlines or acrimonious breakups. Field's name ceased to appear in the gossip columns with a new man's in the ensuing years. She wasn't seen at glitzy parties with Hollywood's elite or candlelit dinners. Rather, she was taking care of her youngest son, working solidly in television and movies, and living her life as she saw fit. She hasn't been in a significant relationship for almost 30 years, and she appears to be very content with that decision. Peace, however, was not without its lessons. She also learned more than she ever imagined from one connection in particular. It was more than a romantic relationship. There was a collision. Exhausting and thrilling in equal measure. You could feel invisible one minute and indestructible the next because of that kind of connection. The volatile connection between Burt Reynolds and Sally Field. Sally Field had already experienced 2 love burns by the time she met Burt Reynolds in 1977. However, her career was taking off. In Smokey and the Bandit, she slipped into the role of Carrie that year, which would propel her from TV idol to legitimate movie star, win her a Golden Globe nod, and introduce her to the guy who would become her most alluring and frustrating love interest. There was no denying their on-screen chemistry. No matter how skilled an actor you are, you can't replicate the kind of heat, the fast banter, or the covert glances. In those initial heady months, it was even more intense off-camera. However, such a strong passion seldom remains in the safe zone. Sparks will eventually either burn you or keep you warm. Sadly, Sally was burned by the sparks. With the arrival of Norma Rae, the first scorch marks emerged. In 1979, Sally was experiencing the kind of professional euphoria that most performers can only imagine. Norma Rae's role was transforming. It gave viewers a glimpse of Sally as the tough, rebellious, and less vivacious girl next door. After Hollywood finally recognized her potential, the movie quickly generated a lot of award talk, and she was asked to attend the Cannes Film Festival to help see it through to completion. She pictured Burt beside her, encouraging her and sharing the limelight. Burt, however, was unwilling to leave. Sally was shocked to discover that her boyfriend wasn't as supportive as she had assumed, and her feelings went beyond simple disappointment. Additionally, his distancing became unavoidable as the Oscar speculation intensified. He asked her whether she truly believed she would win anything in a half-joke, half-cut line one day. On paper, the comment appears innocuous, but when it is delivered, it hurts like a bruise. He vehemently declined to accompany her to the 1980 Oscars. She was left fumbling as a result. Just the most significant night of her career approaching, with no companion or plan. She was rescued by actor David Steinberg and his wife Judy, who poured champagne, swept her into a vehicle, and turned the night from a solitary ascent into a party. A few hours later, her hands were shaking and her pulse was racing as she held the Oscar for Best Actress. Burt didn't witness it. Although the partnership faltered for a few more years, the truth had been revealed in the back of the mind. It was the silent understanding that she needed a companion who would appreciate her accomplishments and be able to stand at her side without feeling overshadowed. And they were finished by 1982. However, that wasn't quite the end of their story. The press loved to pick at the details of their affair, including the highs and lows, the public smiles, and the drama behind closed doors, even after she won her second Oscar in 1985 for Places in the Heart. It was destined to become a Hollywood legend. Conflict, attraction, and an unresolved ending. In 1988, Burt married Lonnie Anderson, a union that would fail 6 years later. Sally remained unmarried. Burt would refer to her as the love of his life years later. She didn't exactly feel the same way. She described their time together as indelible, after he passed away in 2018 at the age of 82, acknowledging that those years had lingered in her memory for 40 years. However, she ultimately shared the version of the narrative she had been holding for years in her memoir, which was published in fragments just days after his passing. Yes, Burt had played a significant role in her life, but only for a brief and complex period of time. For the last 30 years of his life, they had not spoken. She explained how he used his celebrity to guide everyone around him, including her, and how it had become hardened into control. In her words, they were a great suit of flaws. She had fallen into him blindly, as even though she'd made some soul-deep promise to him lengthy before that they had met. The relationship became instant, excessive, and threaded via with disapproval, distance, and an undercurrent of hurt that never clearly left. Looking returned, she became quietly grateful he hadn't been alive to study the e-book. Not because she desired to erase their records, but due to the fact she knew her fact could wound him, and she didn't want that to be her very last present. And in conventional Sally discipline style, she may want to lace even the most complicated history with humor. On Watch What Happens Live in 2022. Whilst requested to rank her on-screen kisses, Sally did not hesitate as she stated that Burt was a terrible kisser. And her verdict for him being a terrible kisser changed into due to the fact there was too much drooling worried. It is smooth to romanticize them. Impossibly 8504CA0E3FB5BFCDBDF1E8263F0C30EF stars, height 70s glamour, and the runaway success of Smokey and the Bandit. However, behind the sleek pictures changed into a female mastering the difficult way that lasting love can't be constructed with a person who sees your light as a risk. Sally Area in no way remarried after Burt. Not due to the fact she stopped believing in love, however, because she began believing in herself extra. The girl who would possibly have bent herself to match someone else's comfort was long gone. In her vicinity stood a girl who had leered and earned the right to choose her very own happiness, even supposing choosing herself. And that is precisely why many years later she will say with complete readability that marriage is off the table. The real motive why Sally Field will by no means get married once more. Sally Field has been married 2 times, but she's long made peace with the truth that she'll in no way stroll down the aisle once more, and he or she's no longer romanticizing the idea. Talking on Julia Louis-Dreyfus' podcast, Wiser Than Me, the Woodland Gump superstar said she honestly could not image herself getting married for a 3rd time. She even laughed on the concept, musing that it'd best appear if she met someone she surely wanted to spend more than a handful of minutes with, and that, she admitted, had never sincerely been her skill set. It wasn't that she had a grudge towards guys, she explained, but as an alternative that she'd by no means been specifically proper at deciding on the proper ones for herself. The styles were familiar, a spark at the start, the shine fading, and then the realization they were not the right suit. She remembered how a couple of associates had complained that she did not deal with them with the equal tenderness and staying power she confirmed her sons. In her thoughts, the answer turned into obvious. The men were not her kids, and she failed to consider grown-up romantic love have to be burdened with the protective, unconditional kind you supply your youngsters. Looking returned, she should see the thread strolling through her alternatives. She had by no means been with a person who could love her without also looking to mold her. Someone who may want to deal with her complete self without feeling dwindled through it. Too many seemed to need her to be much less, in order that they failed to sense the strain to be extra. And for Aria, that shrinking act became no longer negotiable. Her first marriage to high school sweetheart Stephen Craig ended after 7 years and children. Her second to producer Alan Griezmann lasted nearly a decade and taken her a 3rd son earlier than they divorced in 1994. Between them became her most well-known romance, the stormy stop and begin dating with Burt Reynolds. Reynolds appreciated to call her the affection of his life. But for discipline, the fact changed into extra complicated. At the peak of her profession in 1980, while she turned into nominated for Great Actress at the Oscars for Norma Rae, Reynolds confirmed little exhilaration. She remembered him telling her he wouldn't be attending the ceremony along with her. A choice that harmed even more while she now not best gained the Oscar, but additionally took home the Pinnacle Performing Prize at Cannes. Reflecting on it now, she says he simply wasn't type to her in that second. An element that stayed with her long after the applause diminished. It turned into the type of turning factor that whilst small at the floor, adjustments the way you see the humans closest to you. And for Sally Field, it clarified something. Love without help is just some other kind of loneliness. What do you think about Sally Discipline's selection to not get married again? Proportion your mind with us inside the comments under. Recollect to like, percentage, and subscribe. Also, click on the next video shown in your display screen. You may experience it.